A U.S. Senate seat for Louisiana is on the ballot for the November 8th elections. Early voting begins this upcoming Tuesday, and then Election Day is November 8th. 5 congressional seats are up for grabs, including Steve Scalise's seat, who is running for re-election. Voters will also decide if Senator John Kennedy keeps his Senate seat in Washington. You can find a link on our website with all of the information you need before you cast your ballot. Just go to WWLTV.com and click on the Links tab. Now let's take a closer look at that U.S. Senate race, which we have been watching very closely. We've had Senator Kennedy's top 3 challengers on the show this week: Luke Mixon, Gary Chambers Jr., and Sarita Stib. And joining me now to discuss the race is political analyst Dr. Silas Lee. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure voters were informed as they head to the polls starting next week if they're early voting. Let's talk about John Kennedy's challengers. We had 3 of them on the show this morning. We did invite Kennedy on the show. He said he was not available due to his schedule. How important are these midterm elections, and what are we looking at in this Senate race?
Well, the midterm elections are defined as a temperature check whereby the party that's in power, that would be the Democrats, it always reflects a change in attitudes and sometimes preferences as well as a change in issues of the electorate. So since World War II, I think we've only had 2 cases where the party that is in power retained that power, and that may not be the case here. We haven't seen that happen in the past. And this is a different political environment. It's the most challenging political environment, not only for candidates, but for elected officials when you look at the multiple issues that voters are confronted with and trying to survive: inflation, public safety, war in Ukraine. So there's a lot of voter uncertainty, a lot of voter frustration out there.
All right, and we're going to take a close look at several races. This week we focused on the U.S. Senate race for John Kennedy's seat. Talk about this race. Of course, the polls all show, there's been 3 public polls that show that John Kennedy has more than 50% of the vote, which would mean he wouldn't even go to a runoff.
Right now, you have 11 candidates. The question is, will he be able to maintain that? Has he peaked? Will someone else be able to gather some momentum? And the key for John Kennedy naturally would be to avoid a runoff. For the other candidates, they would like to cause a runoff. Naturally, when you look at the fundraising power and proudness of John Kennedy, he has 36 million compared to, if you put all the other candidates together, they may not equal that, nowhere near that.
Yeah, not even close.
Right. So it's a question of resources. Now, we have some very competitive Senate seats around the country: Wisconsin, Florida, Pennsylvania, Arizona. Those are some very competitive seats right now. And Louisiana happens to be one of the seats to watch that may not be as competitive. But in this game, every seat counts.
It does. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the challenges we've had on this week. I'd like to get your thoughts. We had Gary Chambers Jr. on Tuesday, bills himself as a progressive candidate and has made a huge wave on social media with his campaign.
He has made a huge wave. This is not his first time running. He has name recognition. He has a very strong social media profile. Right. And that does help him. However, when you look at the midterms always attract a more conservative and a smaller electorate quite often. So for Gary Chambers, he must expand his voter support base.
All right, do you think he can do that?
It's a short period of time, and you have to have more assets and resources than just social media.
Okay, what about Luke Mixon? He's, of course, being endorsed by Governor John Bel Edwards, seems to have a similar Democratic profile and describes himself as a moderate. Well,
he has a lot of institutional as well as progressive support. And the challenge for all the challengers to John Kennedy: resources, and right now the clock is ticking. Now we have to see at what percentage does Kennedy either avoid a runoff or if he is forced into a runoff. And that's the key element right now, because with voter enthusiasm the way it is not the highest, and it will take resources to motivate them.
Right, and then we have Sarita Stib, who was pardoned by President Donald Trump and has made a name for herself working with women who have been released from prison.
Women who have been released. She has a social media following, but that is not enough right now at this point in time.
If you see any of these contenders possibly go into a runoff with Kennedy, who do you think has the best chance?
That's a good question. I mean, right now you look at Luke Mixon because he is on TV, radio, and he's engaging in some retail politics. So he would probably have a very good chance of making, but look at the number of candidates you have. So each one is going to probably take away a few votes. Now, who are they taking those votes away from?
Right.
And you have 6 independents running too.
Yeah, and then you look at those 3 polls, and after Kennedy was more than 50% in the 3 polls. In one of the polls, Luke Mixon is the next runner-up, and then in the other 2 polls, Gary Chambers is.
And the caution, we have to caution about with polls is that that's the horse race.
Okay.
And we have to look at other characteristics to determine whether or not a candidate is strong, effective, or if a candidate may have some vulnerabilities.
All right. And you did mention voter turnout. Do you think voters are going to turn out for this election? Are they excited enough?
Early vote is the key now. That is the secret sauce right now, because you cannot wait till Election Day to mobilize voters. Voters now want to take advantage of early voting and vote by mail.
All right. Well, Dr. Silas Lee, thank you for joining us with your insight into this race. Guys, you can watch all the interviews we did with the contenders in this race on our website, wwltv.com, and our YouTube channel.